Why do I do what I do? I could answer that. I understand this is mine. I came here for this. Now there are no doubts. This is mine, I know what I'm doing. And at some point I maybe stop doing this, I will have fulfilled this experience and it will be enough for me. But at this moment it interests me, I understand it, and it brings me no doubts. It's probably when people coming in and just know what for. I came here and I know this is mine. There is that certainty free of doubt, and it must be accomplished. The way hypnosis came, for years while living in England, I was practicing energy healings and sound therapies, and hypnosis had interested me for a long time. Years ago I had read about Edgar Cayce and how he would enter a trance state. He was probably the most famous mystic of the 20th century. He would enter a trance state and tell a person everything. The experience was very intense. Intense in a good way, as I had many internal questions that were deeply personal and even seemed to determine my survival as I was preparing for a long, difficult journey running across Alaska. And Arthur was your guided hypnosis. That was that final point. In the other words, the cherry on the pie that systemized everything within me and calmed me down. Because through hypnosis, I realized I could be much calmer than I had thought I can be. I understood that the true power comes from a sense of calm, not from some sort of overthinking or over-trying to do something. Then everything became very clear, and I allowed things to flow while still remaining active. He would reveal everything, who they were in the past life, who they are in this life, why they are sick, and the root causes of their ailments. He would even tell people which pharmacy to buy medicine from, which shelf it was on, and which doctor to visit. His readings were so unique that they have been recorded at Edgar Cayce Institute. Those books left such an impression on me 15 years ago that I read them multiple times, and hypnosis kept drawing me in. Those blockages, that was something else. It felt so hard to let go, pulling and pulling, and more would still come out. And then it felt like everything inside had been extracted. That's why it was that sense of emptiness. There was nothing inside, but there was no desire for it to be filled. There was a wish for it to fill up slowly and gradually. That lightness, that was the best part. When I started practicing healing, I encountered situations where in some cases it was impossible to help a person. There was no solution to be found. That energy healing removes symptoms, but the causes lie deeper, and all causes exist in our subconscious. That's what interested me, how to access the subconscious mind. I believe the possibilities are endless. The limit are yourself. However much you allow yourself to enter that reality, that is how much you can experience it. You are the only limit. The way I realized that there is absolutely no boundaries. It is an infinite source. You can take as much from it as you want, but you would explode if you would took everything. There's your limitations. In that sense, you won't take more than your body or your consciousness allows, and only as much as its capacity permits. Perhaps your consciousness could limit you so much that you could see it but not take anything from it. Personally, I felt that sense of infinity. How to guide a person into a trance. The main thing here is to learn how to effectively guide someone into a trance state. Beyond that, the next steps depends on your abilities. The way you perceive the world is how you can guide the person, how you can convey that world to them. A lot depends on your own perception. You can focus and search only on health issues, looking at the problems in the body on emotional level, or you can dive deeper into parallel worlds, alternative realities, other lives. And if you perceive that as a part of your reality model, you can help the person to get there too, extract that information and attract that knowledge. I think it is possible to find all the most important answers. By important, I mean that sometimes we don't even realize we have a certain blockage and think everything is fine. Take a common example with the family. On the surface, the relationships with the family seems great, but when you dive into the subconscious, you find a hook, something unresolved, something that isn't right in that area, with the partner or within the family. And I thought it was my partner's fault, but it turned out the issue was within me. And going into a trance state, with the help of hypnosis, helps uncover that. And it changes your thinking, but it doesn't change your thinking from the surface, it changes from the very roots. Then you understand that this is real. This time I saw light. I saw a very beautiful violet light, something that might not even exist on Earth. I wouldn't be able to describe it, I just know it was a violet color. And I was rising upward into a place with such a bright light, and I started seeing something like angel wings, and I realized that I had somehow came in contact with these beings of light. I'm not really sure how to name it, your alter ego, your guides, or whatever they are. We're getting into mysticism here, but I understand that their energy is incredibly strong, immensely powerful, and you with your all stereotypes and your reality seem so small and weak sometimes there. The first level was like, I still didn't understand if I had fully entered. I wasn't sure where I was. I felt as if I wasn't in my body, yet I was still in it. I was floating in weightless space, just floating and floating. Then later I began to ascend. Though I understood that there were no limits, I kept rising in another space. I ended up in another dimension. In that space I felt as if something was attacking me. I didn't really understand what it was. I can only describe what I felt at the time and what I can put into words now. I felt something was attacking me, but then something from the side placed a protective shield around me. I just felt this white light surrounding me, shaped almost like an egg. Everyone chooses something based on themselves. For me, this immediately clicked and the events started aligning. From my very first hypnosis sessions, from the beginning of my work with people, my initial practice was while still living in England, and I was searching for traditional problems. But what happened instead was people would immediately enter past lives, end up in the space between lives, meet spiritual beings, and for me that was just wow, those first events, those first hypnosis. A woman was sitting by a house, she was drinking a tea from a very beautiful Moroccan style cups, and I realized that she was somehow a past incarnation of mine, and I understood that she was trying to communicate with me, but she was doing so through her gaze. It was as if no words were coming from her, only thoughts, and I tried to ask something, and she just looked at me, and through that gaze I understood that all the answers were within me. I simply understood that I cannot fully grasp everything that is happening there, I cannot take everything from there, and the energy there was so intense that it sometimes felt like you could only approach it as if through a glass, because I realized that if you come too close to it, it could even burn you. And then you understand that traditional medical hypnosis is completely different. This is something else, entirely. In traditional hypnosis we search for emotional problems within matter, but when you realize that you are not matter at all, that you are energy, that you are a soul, just a part of it manifesting in the matter, everything changes. Quantum physics describes this perfectly. Everything comes from there to here, and from here it shapes matter. Matter doesn't form itself. The unseen world shapes matter, and when life leaves, the matter remains. The physical form appears unchanged, but the life, the energy of a person is gone. When you understand this, you start living and working through this perspective. It stops being hypnosis and becomes a trance, a subconscious state, where there is a kind of universe Google. You can connect to it, communicate, act, change the past, change the future. I have witnessed countless trance state healings and processes where people adjusted their future and were simply allowed to experience it. It is not that you let them in the future and change it there, it just happens naturally. Their subconscious pushes them into the future. That means they have an incredible opportunity to adjust their future steps to secure a good future. Of course, there is always the possibility that they won't fulfill it, because our mind is the main obstacle, our doubt, lack of confidence. But once you live through that future in a trance, there is high probability that they will become physically real. I ended up in Morocco. It was very interesting. I saw Eastern style architecture, but I realized that I had lived there before. And she told me, but for some reason she gestured with her hand as if showing me direction, saying, go to Marrakesh, go there and rest and you will get all the answers. And in real life I had been in Morocco, but never made it to Marrakesh. There is a huge square in Marrakesh, and it is the square of sorcerers, where magicians, yogis and mystics from all over the world gather. They demonstrate what they know, their various practices and even magic. And yes, I need to go there, the energy is very strong there. Well, it is like a Google of universe. That's probably what spiritual literature calls the Akashic records. Quantum physics refers to it as a matrix of the universe, or God. It is the source of everything and where all information exists. Quantum physics states that all possible versions of our lives, all possible opportunities already exist, and we choose, with our attention, which one we will manifest. So I only call it Google of Universe, because all the information is there. It is the collective vast consciousness, the Akashic records, which spiritual literature often describes. Edgar Cayce refers to them as the Akashic records, where you connect and find what you need in the Akashic library. Beyond everyday experiences, from the very beginning, I had these intense experiences from past lives, and it became my reality. What once I read in the books, what I saw in the science fiction films about past lives became my reality. These invisible worlds, these spiritual beings, they also became my reality. Because during hypnotic trance you communicate with them and everything that happens in that space is tangible. If someone stands in that space, if something is happening, the person experiences it. That space even thickens and everyone present physically feels it. Before I felt like I knew that this was real, but now I have touched it. The pain was incredibly intense, absolutely overwhelming. And I didn't even understand it at first. I even started getting frustrated. Why wasn't it disappearing? It felt like knives or needles were stuck in my hands, and no matter how much I tried, I just couldn't let go of them. I wanted to release them, but simply couldn't. It only worked when we finally uncovered the situation that had caused it. Otherwise, my mind kept trying to interfere. I don't know, maybe it sounds silly, but I believe in the existence of my grandfather's soul around me in this space. Perhaps strangest thing for me was realizing how powerful physical sensations can be in hypnosis. That was the most surprising part. Seeing something like my grandfather or certain situations for me, that was all seemed simple and understandable. But that hypnosis could trigger such intense physical sensations, that was completely unexpected. There was such heat, such temperature, and the pain in my hands was so unbearable that I felt like I couldn't stand it anymore. Then I felt this deep trust in my surroundings. It was like walking at night in an unfamiliar neighborhood, poorly lit, and seeing people carrying knives, for example. But then someone comes to protect you and says, "It's okay, I know everyone here, nothing bad will happen." And suddenly you feel much safer. That's exactly how I felt at that moment. And then, when I got used to that space, I felt it was time to move on further. Then I saw these tube-like structures on the sides, something like a wormholes in physics. This was a kind of tunnel separating this reality from another. But then I felt the sense of excitement and hesitation. Should I go through it or not? It was like standing before a major life change, a change so significant that you know it will transform you completely, to the point where you may never return to who you were before. After several years, I realized that each of these practices also changed me, because I experienced the entire process along with the person. All these spiritual practices shaped my understanding along the process. It's like how we search for everything on the internet every day. Similarly, we can close our eyes, enter a trance state, and access all the answers. It truly matched. That wasn't very strong because I truly knew it wasn't a bad thing, but that restlessness, some kind of slight fear still remained, and when you told me to go and not to be afraid, I gained even more confidence and simply surrendered. But this knowledge, these books, are only reaching us now. In Lithuania, the spiritual awakening over the past decade has been incredible. I observe myself, people, younger generation. The transformation in the country is powerful. In England, this shift happened a long time ago. First, it was just wow. This incredible information from books, from science fiction movies. Suddenly it became accessible to me, and I indulged in it, devoured it, piecing together my model of reality. At one point I felt like I understood everything, but then another phase came where all my previous understanding fell apart and new practices emerged. Today, I have reached a stage where I realize that there are aspects of existence I don't know at all. They are intriguing and mysterious. But the one thing now I understand with absolute certainty is the importance of soul experience, that we are here simply for experience itself, not to divide things into good or bad, possible or impossible, not to blindly follow spiritual practices, but to focus on our personal experience. And this is crucial for the soul. It guides us toward personal experiences. When we start embracing that, everything in our lives begins to flow. What I have realized is that our personal experience is incredibly important. Whether we are construction workers, doctors, or politicians, our soul has came here for a specific experience. That is the greatest form of spirituality, to be a spiritual politician, a spiritual builder, a spiritual doctor. Not everyone works with people's subconscious or health, but each of us has to manifest that spirituality in our own field. Because spirituality exists in everything, it all comes from the same source. So that was my realization, to stop dividing things, to acknowledge every person's experience as truly spiritual, because it is important. That the other worlds and alternative realities exist, even quantum physics has proven this. But for a person to experience them, it probably happens through some kind of imagination. I think I was going inward, into connection with, I don't know how to name it, the Creator, God, myself. I had to enter that connection, to go through certain layers, like levels in a computer game, one level after another. And to me, his death was... I feel like I still remember everything even today. And somehow now the questions in my life about self-love, about closing my heart, they all follow. And suddenly I got an answer. I can feel it even now. I can feel his love, and I truly feel him. I have always felt him, but this time it was like confirmation. The body and the head felt separate. We cleared the blockages from the body, and then the head felt so heavy because the body was already light. And then there was this sensation of something dark moving inside my head. And someone said, "Ask what it is." And then the answer that came to me was, we are your emotions. That gave me that deeper understanding of myself and acceptance of the self. I think that for the person who does not realize that we are both soul and body, and that the soul leaves and takes on another body, it might be difficult to grasp. It all depends on how open person is, how much they feel like a part of the universe, and how much they feel the universe within themselves. And I see a bright, bright blue sky, a shade of blue that simply doesn't exist on Earth. And I understand that I have to fly into that sky, but if only that would be so easy to do. And some voice tells me, you will definitely achieve what you want, but it will take a little time and effort. So I realized that in life you should never give up, because eventually you will reach where you need to be. Your essence, the one that exists here in this reality, is no longer playing that game. There, other games are already taking place. There you are touching something very deep. The benefits are simply, how to say, it's immeasurable. They are constantly changing. From my own practice and experience, I can say that it is possible to release emotions, to let go of heavy experiences, to remove consequences, to correct relationships with the loved ones, especially when we carry karmic relationships and drag problematic connections through life. So to correct it and adjust it, even problems that were brought before birth, as well as physical illnesses, can be resolved, because if we look at it from the perspective that we are energy, then in that state when a person is immersed in a theta level, their cells are moving, they are connecting with that cell where everything is in motion and communicating. I have encountered cases where pain and physiological illnesses disappears instantly. The main reason people seek this is psychological and emotional problems, because our mind and events around create so much that we can no longer handle it. The key thing here is experiencing that peace, and in that state, a person reprograms themselves. What we tell ourselves in that state becomes our reality. In that state, person relives everything. That reality is as real as we are sitting here and talking. It is even more real than this reality, because it brings sensations, emotions, thoughts. It creates experiences at the speed of thought. We feel the environment, we feel each other in that state. It is real. And there, it is possible to find most of the answers and solutions. It is possible to heal illnesses, change emotions, change fate, and discover even more incredible things. And hypnosis gives the opportunity to stay in that state for a long time. You can spend several hours there, but when meditating, it might become difficult to stay focused after just 10 minutes. And actually, it is really interesting practice, and afterward, I started to see my family, my daughters, my husband. I realized that they need more of my care, conversation, and attention. Maybe sometimes I shouldn't judge, shouldn't say things in an angry tone, but rather stay silent, give in. I understood what they want from me, what they might be lacking. In short, it's very interesting. I think yes, it is absolutely real. Absolutely everything is real. And if I didn't believe it was real, I probably wouldn't go, I wouldn't do it, wouldn't try to search. Yes, my palms started to tingle, and I felt the energy. That energy was orange and gold. I realized that I needed to activate this energy so I could pass it on to other people, that maybe some kind of practice would appear in my life where I could help and heal them. It wasn't very strong because I knew it wasn't something bad, but that excitement, a kind of tiny fear, remained. And when you told me to go, not to be afraid, I gained even more confidence and just let go. And I remember that I wasn't afraid of where I would end up. I didn't even know where I would end up, but of traveling itself through that tunnel. And later, It felt like I was being spun in a washing machine, spinning and spinning until I was thrown, spat out into a space where I suddenly felt very calm. I felt something, an interesting feeling, a kind of respectful fear, like meeting my master, the one I constantly serve, who controls everything that happens within me and around me. I felt that I was exactly where I needed to be, that I was home, but I was like a servant, and exactly right at that moment, I could ask any question and I would receive an absolutely clear answer. During hypnosis, I saw him as a loving father, and it seemed like there was no other feeling. There was no bad feeling, it was a good feeling. Simply there was happiness, joy, love, and that hug with him felt like opening the heart, that feeling. And it seemed like, here's my grandfather and here's my father. But probably I wasn't trying to restore my connection with my father for no reason. No one understood me, no one. Why I went to him, why I humbled myself, why I allowed myself to be humiliated. But I probably knew that there was that good feeling. It existed. And now, after 10 years, my efforts are showing results. Yes, I got practically all the answers. One session was enough, and the answers were clear. It was sharp experience. The first time in my practice that something left such an wow effect. I had never encountered anything like it before. I was working with a 15-year-old girl. She was there with her mother, and since childhood, she had been drawing all kinds of pictures of spirits and dark entities. During the trance, we managed to understand what she was drawing, what she had brought into this world. The entity she had brought from past lives, it stood in a space, and the girl even sat down. Her mother and I tried to calm her down. She sat there in the trance state. That entity was there with us in the space, and it didn't want it to leave the girl. It introduced itself with all its names, explaining what it was, and it will accompany the girl throughout life. This is a very strong negative experience accumulated from past lives, and in this life, when she becomes conscious, she must live with this experience, transform it, or it will follow her. It was very strong experience. For several hours we couldn't stop it. The process was happening, and you can't interrupt it, because that would mean dragging the whole thing into this reality. So it had to be completed. This is probably what raises the most questions. People are afraid of this, but in reality, when a person tries it, they understand that no harm can be done to them. A person remains conscious enough, and anything that is not acceptable to them, that their subconscious does not truly desire, will cause them to wake up from any hypnotic state. They will resist, and the process will break. Everything that happens must be acceptable to the person, and deep down, they must want to resolve it and feel it. The only harm that could be named is if the guide gets scared and interrupts the process. I have encountered people who say, I started crying and trembling, then the therapist stopped the session, they got scared. Then we drag the person back with that emotion. Then they don't know what they have brought back with them. That emotion surfaces and remains carried into this reality. And every experience, no matter how unpleasant, pain, screaming, squealing, howling, must be fully lived throughout until it's completely neutralized. When it is neutralized, everything is resolved. This is probably the safest way to change, to find answers, to heal. Everything is within the person who comes and seeks help. You touch their information, and the answers comes from them. The person themselves knows the best what is needed for them, so there is absolutely no danger. Some time ago, I thought that this is probably my field, the one that doesn't cause me any fear. because ever since my time in England, spirits have been present in my life. There in England, there are many old, century-old houses where hauntings occur, and these things became my reality. I know how to communicate with them, interact, change, and transform them. And when this is yours, it's probably like a mechanic who knows where is a malfunction in a car, and you are not afraid of your work. I realize that invisible world is completely acceptable to me. There is no need to fear it. It's just as real as this one. The main thing is that if we are not afraid of it, we can change, transform, and work with it. But if there is some fear, then it is better to don't go into it. And if you want to work on yourself, the key element is attention. We can feel where we're losing attention. When we lose attention, we might harm some small part of ourselves, but when you are observant enough, you can recover everything, like in a training. When you understand where you got hurt, you don't repeat the same mistake. In any way, there is no fear, and there is no need to fix anything. It's like a doctor. When they go to see a patient, they should not be afraid of getting sick or infected, because the fear itself creates the possibility for something to happen. So everything happens very simply without fear and special preparation, just naturally. As I understand, many people who never experience hypnosis think that in a hypnotic state, a person can be controlled and manipulated, and because of this they feel a bit scared. I don't know, maybe this is a mindset created by the West perspective. But in reality, even in the deepest state of hypnosis, you are aware that you are in hypnosis, yet at the same time you also feel yourself lying there. I felt it when you guided me into hypnosis. I felt my surroundings, but at the same time, I was so deeply elsewhere that if someone had silently entered the room with a knife, I probably would have caught their hand. You become incredibly sharp to everything. If something feels off, you immediately sense it because you enter such a pure state. It's not like some people might imagine that it's an invasion of your consciousness. No, you open your consciousness yourself. You're opening it to yourself. You find yourself there, in the other words. It is impossible to cause harm because everyone receives the experience they are meant to have. Even if they don't feel it in this moment, they may experience it tomorrow or the next day during another practice. They will still have that experience. Traditional medicine, how to put it? Hypnosis is tied to traditional medicine. According to traditional medicine, we are just matter, simply matter, where there is no soul, nothing deeper. They deal with matter, they also deal with some emotions, but in traditional hypnosis, emotions are the product of the mind, a result of the brain. But when you perceive it differently, that's when I distance myself from traditional hypnosis, because I see myself as a soul, as an energy that simply functions within the matter. And when you see yourself as a soul, as an energy, you communicate on the level of the soul, on the level of the energy, and there are the most amazing things are possible, such an instant healing, discovering and finding all kinds of solutions and answers. So that's the difference. One heals through matter, through the mind, through the brain, while here you heal from the level of the soul, from that invisible realm, from the level of the energy, from the universe, so to speak, from where we originate. These are completely different, fundamentally opposing perspectives, yet they lead to the same result, helping a person become happy and healthy. In fact, both medicine and spiritual practices ultimately aims to do the same thing, to make people happy. I understood that there is no single path. All practices are good. Different practices suits us at different periods of our lives. Some people are helped by traditional hypnosis, others by surgery, others by psychotherapist conversation. Another person who walks a spiritual path and really need an answer about who they are. That's where I can help, to help them touch that information about where we came from, where the soul originates, who they truly are. It is the soul. Here the soul dives into its archives, not archives, but into its sensations and some kind of information that truly exists within the soul. The soul says, oh, this experience is very deep, very real, but the mind says no, something not right here, it's too much to truly be real. Trance. Trance is simply a state of our mind that helps us to understand how everything functions. Right now, as we speak, take a phone, a simple old mobile phone. It's just connected to a telephone network. That's how we function from neurological perspective at beta level. We simply live. When we relax, we transition to the alpha level, a light meditative state. Imagine that this level, some kind of Wi-Fi turns on. When Wi-Fi turns on, additional information becomes accessible. Then we go deeper, transitioning into the theta level. The theta level is a good trance state. In the theta level, we turn on the internet. When we turn on the internet, we can connect with all the information that exists on Earth. The internet is accessible everywhere. When we dive not just into the alpha level, but into the deeper theta level, everything there is reachable, all information. People access this state through meditation, various spiritual practices, and ritual dances, entering a trance state. Only one specialist who is present can help a person maintain that state from 1 to 5 hours. And during those hours, work takes place, searching answers, questions, solutions. What I also realized during hypnosis, that this state of calmness and relaxation can be applied outside of hypnosis. When you start cleansing yourself, since we all have different ways of cleansing ourselves, I won't talk about it. We all have individual ways to cleanse. You can experience a state of purity where you become very sensitive to your surroundings, but not in a way that makes you irritable. Instead, it's a firm sensitivity. I mean, through meditation, you might experience a flash of it at certain moments, but to stay in that state for a long time, hypnosis is exactly the method that can keep you in that focus for an extended period. Yes, absolutely. At that moment, while traveling, you are fully in that reality. Your body is there, you feel that it is there, but it just exists, without any reflections of that reality. You are in that other reality, like in a dream. In a dream you also travel, but you are not consciously aware of the process. However, here, you participate with your full consciousness and awareness. At some point, I thought how many trance sessions I had done. Well, hundreds. And one session can last 3 or 4 hours. The longest I've encountered lasted 5 hours. So truly it's hundreds of hours of experience, of reprogramming, for others and for myself. Because of that, my entire world has changed. When I started working with this, my whole perception, my entire world radically transformed. It just feels like words cannot fully contain everything I just said. It was an invaluable and profoundly important personal experience. And even later, I remember, the feeling came to me that many people should experience something like this, in one form or another. And it shouldn't be something pompous and overly popular, where everyone does it, because the quality would drop. But for people who have already explored some depth, who seek and perceive the world more broadly, I strongly recommend it. The inner sensation is there, and somehow through hypnosis what you realize gets imprinted in your subconscious. What I became conscious of, the changes in my subconscious was very strong, and still is. A year after my first hypnosis session, I can say with certainty that a lot has changed in the areas identified during that first session. the things I had to work on and still continue to work on. For me, it is an experience of diving into myself, going to places within that I have blocked off, the things I don't see easily. Perhaps a truly free person has no limits, none at all. I can't speak for others or imagine how they feel, but for me, it's been a natural process. I was looking for this. I took slow steps, but now I also understand that my searches began in childhood. And so I entered this process not knowing if I'm ready, because you don't know what will come. And yet there is still fear, the fear of meeting yourself. But this is a conscious choice. It has to be. A person must consciously want it. There is this indescribable lightness. It is not that I don't have a body, but it is a very subtle lightness. Because what happened today was very subtle. In that sense, you won't take more than your body or your consciousness allows, and only as much as its capacity permits. Perhaps your consciousness could limit you so much that you could see it but not take anything from it. Personally, I felt that sense of infinity. It wasn't just looking at my fears, it was much more and much deeper. I feel very calm and good. There are still physical sensations, but my head feels much lighter. For many years, like so many others, I was searching, immersed in spiritual practices, reading countless books, devouring every esoteric and quantum physics text I could find. I absorbed it all. The experiences and practices were deeply interesting. As soon as I began this work, I touched on these trance states, brain states, and how to guide others into them. All the answers came to me. I brought together all the spiritual insights and pieces of wisdom that previously contradicted one another. Clarifications came. It became clear what spiritual practices truly are and why they are needed. All the questions about parallel worlds simply disappeared. Everything fell into place. There was complete clarity, no doubt at all. And I truly experienced it. It became a reality. That world, the one we access when we close our eyes, is real. The unseen space are full of everything. It communicates with us and affects us. All of this brought peace, clarity, and deeper understanding of life. And perhaps the most powerful realization was that death does not exist. The very moment we die, when physical death begins, it happens, but the process does not stop. We continue traveling, moving forward into the most wonderful worlds, experiences, and event sequences. And that inspires living. All the irrational fears we used to have disappears. It becomes your understanding. And when this knowledge becomes part of you, functioning becomes very simple and easy. So you know that nothing ends, everything gains meaning. You realize there is no need to rush anywhere. The process of eternity is eternal. So you do everything in your own time. Everything has its own time, a cycle. Nothing in the universe happens without a cycle, winter, summer, and other periods.